I work with this business and copywriting coach to refine her positioning, and this resulted in her almost doubling her launch revenue after working together. This is Vickie Dickson, a well-known coach in the human design space, and she has a very interesting background of starting five businesses across. Just one second, I need to find my notes. She had the retail store, she did direct sales, the crystal shop, online, e-commerce, and then added brick and mortar later, the holistic health practice, and now the fifth business is as a human design coach. And each of these five businesses back to back, she scaled to over six figures. So she's got a very good track record of starting and growing businesses. When we were talking about working together, she was in a very similar place that a lot of other online coaches find themselves in at some point on their business journey.
I think people would have thought I was in a pretty good place. I had definitely crossed the six-figure mark in this business, which I had done in other businesses before, but I was attracting some of the clients that weren't really the right fit. I had a solid offer that I had offered for the third time. It was going really well, but there were some people in it who really, it was too early in the game for them to be in it. So I knew that there was something off with my positioning. I had the opportunity to work with a fairly large company in the human design space. And I think because some of their people were filtering through and I wasn't really certain on my position, there was a bit of a kind of kerfluffle there.
Hearing directly from your customers who or what you were up against when they were considering solutions or other people to work with is such an essential part of positioning. So, of course, I wanted to know who I was up against when Vicky was considering solving this issue for her business.
I feel like I was desperately looking for some solutions because I knew something was off. And as a second line in human design, it's really hard for me to see it for myself, but I think it's really hard for everybody to see it for themselves. I knew my website was and still is a bit of a mess. So I think I was starting with, okay, if I could just get my website in order. And I kept hiring people and they wouldn't get the work done or whatever would happen with that. So it just couldn't come together there. And then anyone that I was talking with about how am I going to clarify this? How am I going to go a little deeper in this? There wasn't any depth. It was like the spiritual space. I'll create a goddess archetype for you. I'll create a, whatever. And I just wasn't really into that. There was a lot of people who wanted it to look pretty. They wanted to have different photos. They wanted to have, different fonts. It was all about the look of it, but not really the underlying depth. And I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yeah, sorry, I just called myself agreeing when he said that your website was a mess, and I want to take
It
that
is.
back,
It still is.
take it
It
back
still
now.
is.
Cool. And then let's just talk a bit about what working together was like.
So I have been in the entrepreneurial space for over 30 years. So I've done a lot of these exercises. And I kind of, when I first heard that there were going to be exercises and questions and reflections, I was kind of like, oh God, here we go again. But it was really different. It was the way that you ask the things and the things that you ask were different, especially as they relate to my business. There was a lot more about my actual life and my actual purpose for being here. One of the questions that I really loved was, and I actually emailed this to myself just this week again, because I find I keep going over the work that we did to keep going deeper and deeper. So, one of the questions that you asked me was if you could accomplish one thing in your life, what would it be? And once I answered that question for myself, I was like, oh, okay, I can kind of give myself a pass because I'm doing this already. But you helped me to see how can I bring more of this to the women that I'm here to serve? Why do they need to hear about this work? Why does that matter? And that's the depth of what you offer. What else? I also found it really helpful to understand who I am positioned against. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but what makes me different from that thing because it was totally different. So what my ideal perfect clients that I have served, the people that they were kind of holding me up against, who they would have hired instead, that was mind-boggling for me to see in black and white. I was like, whoa, I really didn't expect it. And it helps me when I go to do my own marketing now to be understanding how I need to be against, for lack of a better word, that person. So another thing that I would add is that I look at my human design all day long. I know my human design inside and out, but I don't see what you see when you look at me. So that was also really a beautiful gift was you reflecting things that I just think everybody can do. And you were actually know this is actually your genius. Like you actually could look at my design and you know me a little bit. So you would look at the design and you would say, well, this is what people are leaning into you for. And it took me by complete surprise because you see something entirely different in me than I see in myself. And I think that that's one of the gifts that you bring to the table as well with this process.
Thank you. Yeah. What I see, for example, is people doing like a range of activities, of which a small percentage is like the actual needle movers, but they get
Mhm.
so caught up in some random periphery stuff, completely losing sight of the core stuff. What I saw for you is this mother hen sort of energy. So this safe space that people can come and as a group go through a process, a transformational process, which, yes, it is intense. There's no deep transformation without a level of intensity. But on the other side, it's so worth it. That's one thing that you were doing, but you're also doing like lots of other things. And
Mhm.
I just wanted to point that out to you that the highest value thing that I see in your business and I was seeing like the best people you were working with recognizing it is that and not losing sight of that. Not only that, but also putting this at the forefront of your branding.
And I
So,
think what I was doing before that was apologizing for that piece of me.
mm,
Like, it's going to be intense, but it's okay. Like, I wasn't standing in that before working with you. Okay, so before I think that I was really, even though I preach against it, and even though I try to tell myself I'm not doing it, I was trying to be more of everything for everyone than I needed to be. I was letting that mother hen energy try to do everything for everyone and care for everyone who came under my wing, and that's not what I'm here for. Like I said, I was doing a lot of apologizing for the intensity. I feel like I've apologized for my intensity for my entire life. And really working with you, it was like, no, I need to let people know that this is who I am and this is what the experience is going to be. You see me this way in a free masterclass, you see me this way in a challenge, in a launch. This is what's going to be in the program. I'm not going to switch hats and be somebody different in there. This is what you're going to get in there. So that was really powerful for me. And then I think the other thing that I keep coming back to with the work that we did was when you said the transformation that people get or the biggest thing that people get shouldn't come as a surprise to them on the back end. And I feel like I was kind of trying to soften that transformation, like it wasn't going to be painful, or I didn't really go into the depth of what it is that I'm able to do with people. And you really brought that out in the reflective questions that you asked. And then in our session together, you really brought that out. Like, did you realize that this is actually what you do?
and just for context, Vicky helps women in particular get clear and communicate the things that they came here to say. When you deal with this deep subject, right, it's quite personal and so on.
Mhm.
You have to go deep. And I remember uh, you had someone in your program who wanted to take it at a completely different pace, wanted to do like a self-study, slow sort of thing. And we were talking about how that misses sort of the point of the program because you get a transformation when you're, in the room with you,
Mhm.
also as part of the group because there's a group dynamic that happens. There is some magic to that where a whole group of women go through a transformation together
Mhm.
rather than you catching up on a video, here and there.
And that was something else that you really helped me see too, was that I could lean into my magic. Because I've always kind of shied away from and wanted it to be a little bit more cut and dry, a little bit more black and white for people. But a lot of it is nuanced. And so trusting myself to be able to say the thing, trusting myself to be able to hear the thing from them, and then trusting my people to be able to understand that this is actually something that I do. I'm quad right in human design, and that's what I'm here for, is for someone to draw the magic out of me. But I had never, I don't think, before working with you, I really leaned in that enough. In the online space and the entrepreneurial space, we do listen to too many people and we don't just trust. And we all need someone in our life who can point that out to us, who can say, no, this is actually the thing. You just got to go with this because we can't always see it for ourselves.
Yeah. And there's so many modalities and tactics and just ways of doing things that you can get caught up in. And just because you work for someone else, even very successfully, doesn't mean that it's the most efficient thing for you to do. Everything always comes back to you, your genius, and your energy. Should we have talk about some numbers? So, because you did a launch before we worked together, and then after we did the positioning, you did another launch of the same program. So, how was the previous one versus the one after?
So in my launch before working with you, my gross sales were around 29,000. And then in this next one after the positioning, they were just over 48,000. And my website is still a mess of copy. There were a lot of things that are still not right. We had so many tech glitches in the second launch. There's no way that it should have outperformed the first one with all of the tech stuff and the mishaps that we had. But I knew that when I was showing up, one, in those master classes, and two, on my socials, I was using that positioning in everything that I did, and that made a big difference. Yeah, and two other things that happened were, one, I put a bump offer on my VIP. So I had the VIP and then I had another bump offer, and that way outperformed the first time. I don't have the numbers right here right now, but the performance was amazing for both of those things. But I was targeting, for lack of a better word, the right people. So of course, my intro offer was right for those right people. So that was powerful. And then the other thing is that I have a lot fewer people now who are not the right people. It really helped to, when you say, who were retargeting with those ads, it brought in the right people to this offer so that I don't have to work as hard to get people up to speed.
So, Vicky, what's next for you and for your brand?
Well, I'm going to get my website fixed up with proper copy and proper positioning, and my next launch will hit 100K. And then some sort of a back end, whether it's a membership or there's some evergreen piece that has to come through so that there's more of a passive income in between, or more of a, let's not say passive, let's say stable income in between launches. So that's where I'm going.
My favorite thing about working with Vicky was how committed she was to giving it 100% all throughout the process, even though some of this work, parts of it may have been things that she's done before. And even with human design, even though she knows her chart more intimately than I do, she was still open to receive my reflection of what I see in her and what attracts other people to her as well from a more objective perspective. And that has helped her tap into what makes her the one and only irreplaceable coach in her space.